Welcome to the Survey Research Project of Bethany Morford and Tassa McGowan. We're excited to be sharing with you today and look forward to your feedback and responses. When examining any research method, it is important to answer some key questions. Today we will be answering the questions why, who, what, when, and how as they apply to the topic of survey research. We will discuss why survey research is useful, who uses survey research, what survey research is, when survey research is conducted, or in other words, the timing of survey research, and how to successfully conduct survey research. Survey research is the process of collecting information from a sample of individuals through their answers to questions. It can be conducted to test hypotheses. For example, a researcher may hypothesize that only 50% of students spend more than an hour each school night doing homework. The researcher would conduct a survey to prove or disprove that hypothesis. Survey research can also be used to learn about people's opinions on problems or issues. If a school is considering the adopting of Common Core standards, it would be wise for them to survey parents and gather data about parental opinions before implementing the change. Survey research has several distinctions. First, it is used to ascertain existing information, while some other methodologies attempt to create new information. Secondly, survey research can only be conducted on humans. While researchers may be able to experiment with or observe animal behavior, it is impossible to ask an animal to rank items in order of importance or to check all that apply. In addition, survey research differs from experimental research in that it does not manipulate groups or create situations. There are a number of survey research studies that are familiar to many people. The most famous is likely the American Census, an in-depth survey research study conducted every 10 years which allows the government to collect information on the American population. Opinion polls are research studies which are often conducted by research companies for other entities, such as businesses, political campaigns, or other interest groups in order to ascertain the viewpoint of the public. Another common example of survey research is the Nielsen's rating program, which tracks public media viewing and listening habits in order for producers to make informed decisions about content. Survey research has a number of advantages. It is typically low cost in comparison with other methods, especially if done through internet. Surveys can reach a wide sampling regardless of geographic location, making them effective for studies with large populations or populations that are very spread out. Surveys are very flexible in nature. They can be used to collect a large variety of data types. Because of the anonymity or confidentiality involved in most survey research, participants are more likely to be candid and honest about their opinions and viewpoints, which can lead to results that are more dependable than those of some other types of research. The survey method also serves to answer the research question of the researcher's study. Research questions can be shared in the short purpose statement that should be at the beginning of every survey. So, who should use survey research? Which researchers would most benefit from this methodology? Survey research can be used within both qualitative or quantitative settings by researchers studying humans to learn about a variety of topics. Researchers can learn about facts, such as the number of people in a household, annual income amount, or a number of years at current job position. They can learn about people's opinions and attitudes about such issues as who would make a better president, if a president's health really matters, how people feel about current events, or if school uniforms are more trouble than they are worth. Past behaviors can be researched by asking participants to share information on their saving, shopping, or viewing habits. Because of its cost effectiveness, survey research is especially conducive for those researchers who need information from a large sample of the population. We've addressed why survey research is beneficial and who should research using survey methods. Now let's move on to the discussion of what survey research is. There are two basic types of survey research. The first and most common is sample research. This allows the researcher to generalize information about the entire population based on the sample. However, in order to be accurate in generalization, it is imperative that the sample accurately represents the population and its subgroups. For example, if a survey about viewpoints of ethnic integration was to be given to the teachers of inner-city schools where 65% of the teachers were non-Caucasian, it would be important that 65% of the sample be non-Caucasian as well in order to generalize their findings. The second basic type of survey research is census survey. In census surveys, the researcher tries to get information from every member of the population. This is normally used with small, easily accessible populations. An example of census research would be the teacher who sends a survey home to each parent of his or her students in order to learn about parental opinions of homework. The teacher wants to hear from every parent in the class, not just a small group of them. In order to be considered survey research, a group of people must all be asked the same questions. If participants are each asked different questions or even the same questions with different wordings, the information collected cannot be generalized. In addition, in order for survey research to be considered accurate and generalizable, at least 50% of that group needs to respond. If a smaller percentage responds, the results are likely skewed and unreliable. Survey research is administered by a questionnaire or an interview. The questionnaire may be emailed or mailed, and the interview may be face-to-face or over the phone, but each must be conducted using an instrument which has either been carefully developed or researched thoroughly and determined to meet the research needs of the study. We've covered the why, the who, the what. But when should surveys be conducted? That all depends on the researcher and the type of results or data he or she is trying to collect. The researcher may choose to do a cross-sectional research survey. This is administered only once, provides quick data and results, and as Mills and Gay share in our text, provide a snapshot of current behaviors, attitudes, and beliefs. One downfall of cross-sectional research is that it does not provide a broad perspective of changes over time. For example, the results of a survey which examine people's opinions about flight would be very different from today than they would have been 200 years ago. The second type of survey timing is longitudinal. This is where a survey is administered 2 or more times with significant periods of time in between. Although re-administering surveys in this way gives a larger scope of data and can be more informative overall, it comes with its own set of challenges. It requires more commitment of time and resources by the researcher. It also brings with it the challenge of retaining willing participants as people move or as their interests change. There are 4 types of longitudinal surveys. The first type is the trend survey. This type examines a specific target population. Each time the survey is administered, it is given to a sample of that target population. For example, a clothing store for teenagers might survey a group of 14-year-olds every year to see how they respond to the current advertising. Each year, the 14-year-olds selected would be a different group of teenagers because the previous group no longer fits within the target population. A second type of longitudinal survey is the cohort survey. This is where a set population is chosen, and then throughout the years, multiple samples are chosen and surveyed. Perhaps a large school district chooses to survey the class of 2020 each of their high school years. For a cohort survey, they would randomly choose 20 students from the class of 2020 each year and give those students the survey. Although there might be some small overlap from year to year, each sample group is different, but is all part of the original chosen population. The panel survey is a third longitudinal survey type. In this type of survey, one sample group is chosen from the population. This could be a group of 50 administrators of Christian schools. Those same 50 administrators would be given multiple surveys over a period of time. Of all four types of longitudinal surveys, the panel is the most likely to have attrition problems, or problems with responders who no longer can be reached or are no longer willing to participate. The fourth type of longitudinal research survey is a follow-up survey. In this type of survey, a sample of a previous study is found and contacted in order to measure developments or changes since the prior study. An example of this would be when a researcher recontacts a group of participants who were involved in an opinion poll 10 years ago and gives them another survey to determine how their opinions have changed over the years. In order for researchers to conduct surveys, they must know more than the purpose of surveys, the types of studies in which surveys are effective, the types of surveys available, and the timing of surveys. They must also know how to properly conduct a survey. Surveys are conducted either by questionnaire, which is a written collection of survey questions usually administered via email or mail, or by interview. Questionnaires have both advantages and disadvantages. They can reach a large sample with relative ease, they are inexpensive, especially if administered electronically, and it is easy to maintain anonymity or confidentiality. However, a questionnaire does not enable a researcher to establish rapport with the participant, and it does not enable the researcher to explain items which may cause confusion for the participant. An interview is when the researcher asks pre-planned survey questions to the participant in person, either face-to-face or over the phone. The advantages of interviewing participants are that because the interview is more personal, the researcher can establish rapport with the responder. If a participant is confused, the researcher can explain or clarify the question. However, the disadvantages of interviews are significant. In most interview situations, cost is increased due to expenses such as travel. In interview settings, anonymity, where the researcher does not know who provides which answers, is almost impossible. There is also a much higher time commitment on the part of researchers who interview each of their sample group. Whether interviewing or sending questionnaires, it is crucial that the instrument used is appropriate. If the survey research design does not thoroughly address accurate sampling techniques, careful measurement, and survey design, the study will provide invalid results. Responsible researchers must take time to design surveys properly. Lack of attention to detail can result in surveys being ignored, inaccurately completed, or misunderstood. Some things to note when creating or choosing a survey instrument are that the survey should be professional and organized. Spelling and grammar mistakes reduce the researcher's credibility in the eyes of the participants. If items have two choices on one page and then spacing makes the final two choices jump onto the next page, responders may fail to see the additional choices and results may be skewed. Although with today's technology it is possible to use a myriad of creative fonts, elaborate fonts may be distracting or cause reading difficulties for participants. Responses should be simple whenever possible, asking the participant to circle a letter or circle a choice instead of writing out information. This shows the researcher's consideration of the effort and time of the participant. The survey items should be relevant. Each item should relate to the research question or questions. In a survey about study habits, there is no need for a question about how often a student goes shopping. Each survey item should only relate to one concept or subcategory. For example, the question, "Do you agree or disagree that although Common Core standards are useful in aligning multiple schools' objectives, they do not align with the values of Christian education," deals with two separate issues: the issue of Common Core standards in aligning schools' objectives and the issue of the alignment of Common Core standards with values of Christian education, and would not be appropriate for use. If the researcher will be comparing results from different subgroups, in other words, if the researcher wants to find out whether male or female students spend more time nightly on homework, then the survey instrument should contain questions that gather data about which subgroups the participant will be classified in. Do not include irrelevant subgroup classification questions. Carefully choose the types of items that will be included on the survey. The majority of most surveys consist of structured items. This means that participants choose from pre-specified answers. One type of structured item is the scale. For example, the Likert scale, in which people choose whether they strongly agree, neither agree or disagree, or strongly disagree. Asking respondents to rank items from most preferred to least preferred, or asking them to check all that apply, are other methods of structuring items. Surveyors may also choose to include some unstructured items. The benefits of those are that they allow participants more depth of response as they give answers in their own words, and responses may be more open or informative. However, these types of items are more likely to be skipped or left blank or unexplained. When considering how to order items, it's good to go from general type questions to specific questions, and to place the most important questions in the middle of the survey in case some participants do not complete the entire survey. To ensure the quality of the survey, follow these guidelines. Give directions in a manner that is clear and simple so that the participants know what to do, and do not get bored reading the instructions, but can quickly understand the directions and begin the survey with confidence. If you fell asleep during that set of instructions, don't give them that way. Give concise, clear, and direct instructions. Delineate any abstruse terms by not using terms like delineate or abstruse. If you use big, rare, or unclear words, explain them. Does the word lot in the question, "Does your child spend a lot of time on homework each night?" mean more than 10 minutes, more than an hour, or more than 3 hours? Be specific. Underline or italicize key phrases. This helps participants to understand the intentions of the researcher. You should avoid leading questions, right? You should, and that is why none should be used in surveys. Allow the responder to provide their own answer. Compared to other students in this class, do you give a point of reference where possible? In other words, when possible, give people a comparison point. For example, instead of asking, "Does your child spend a lot of time each night doing homework?" why not ask, "Compared to other fourth graders that you know, does your child spend more, less, or about the same amount of time doing homework?" When constructing a survey, you must decide whether the responses will be anonymous, where even the researcher does not know by whom the responses were provided, or confidential, where the researcher knows who provided each response, but does not share that knowledge with anyone. Once the decision has been made, stick with it and protect the identity of those involved. Avoid asking sensitive questions. This can lead to participants being turned off and not completing the survey, or to participants providing inaccurate responses because of embarrassment or shame. Avoid assumptions. Don't assume that every parent who sends their child to a Christian school has a personal relationship with Christ. Gather information objectively. Be considerate of the time of the participants. Do not make the survey longer than is necessary. A useful way to ensure that your survey is of good quality is to pilot it with several members of the target population. Ask them to complete the survey and give feedback and opinions about it. In addition to creating a survey instrument, the researcher should create a cover letter explaining the importance of the survey. When writing a cover letter, keep the 5 P's in mind. First, remember that the cover letter should be personal. The greeting should be personal. Dear Mr. John Smith, not Dear Sir, Dear Madam, or to whom it may concern. Secondly, make sure that your cover letter is purposeful. You should explain how the survey will benefit the participant, the field of research that you're conducting, and you should be getting the participant on board so that they're more likely to respond. Your cover letter should be professional in format, in grammar, in spacing, and in spelling. Make sure that you are plausible or credible by getting endorsements or support from those who are experts in the field. And just like you do with your research survey, have several people pilot the cover letter by reading and reacting and responding to it so that you can be sure it's as professional and as polished as you can make it. When the survey instrument and cover letter have been planned, prepared, and piloted, the time comes for administration. There are a variety of administration methods available, but each comes with advantages and disadvantages. This chart, taken from page 199 of our text, gives an accurate description of the advantages and disadvantages of each method. For example, although mail may be an inexpensive way to administer a survey, it's limited to respondents who can read. And although email may give very speedy results, not everyone has email. Using the telephone, you can reach a wide range of locations and respondents. However, every administrator must be trained, and it requires phone number lists that may be difficult to obtain. Personal administration is efficient if all the respondents are closely situated. However, it's very time-consuming. And interview may be recorded for later transcription and analysis. However, the interview method makes it so that there is no anonymity and possible interviewer bias. If conducting a survey by mail, keep these additional considerations in mind. Sign each cover letter personally. This may take more time, but it helps the participant see the researcher truly cares about the study. Give an adequate deadline, not too long, not too short. 2 to 3 weeks is common. This time period allows participants time to respond, but does not give a large window for procrastination. Include a self-addressed stamped envelope. If this step is forgotten, your response rate will be very low. Keep ethics in mind. Be respectful in all communications with participants. Maintain anonymity and confidentiality. Include a self-addressed stamped postcard with just the name of the participant to be sent back separately from the survey once the survey is completed. This allows the researcher to know who has submitted the survey and who needs a follow-up letter. Speaking of follow-up, always follow up on unanswered surveys, but do it respectfully. Don't scold or belittle the participants. First, just send a reminder. Research shows that first mailing results in 30 to 50% participation. However, if you still are lacking responses, resend the survey with a new letter. The second mailing increases responses by about 20% more. However, it's not worth sending a third mailing. If more responses are necessary, get creative with your methods, because research shows that only 10% or less respond after that third mailing. If administering a survey electronically, the cover letter will likely be an email, and the researcher can investigate tools such as Survey Gizmo, Lime Survey, SurveyMonkey, eSurveys Pro, and Qualtrics to decide which best meets their research needs. After administering the survey, time has come to tabulate the results. The simplest method is to have participants respond on scannable answer sheets. This enables results to be automatically tabulated. However, due to cost and availability, this is often not possible. If a scannable answer sheet is not used, each response must be entered in a computer spreadsheet. There are a number of programs that can help in tabulation once responses are entered. If surveys contain open-ended questions, the responses should be coded according to patterns in responses. Some software programs can assist in this as well. When analyzing and presenting results, instead of presenting each item individually, which can be very tedious to read, group all items in clusters according to the subproblem they address. For example, in a survey about parental opinions on homework, all the items dealing with homework difficulty would be addressed in one section, while the items dealing with homework quantity would be addressed in another. This is also an appropriate time to investigate comparisons between subgroups. Do students in single-parent homes or in dual-parent homes spend more time on homework? Do males or do females? This data can be used to provide further information for your research project. Finally, after data has been analyzed, the researcher can draw and share conclusions. Within quantitative studies, the researcher can define respondent characteristics, measure trends, and compare groups and issues. In qualitative studies, the researcher can use data to identify issues that need further research or describe viewpoints on particular issues. There you have it. You know the why, who, what, when, and how of survey research. We hope that the knowledge you've gained helps you in your pursuit of being a better educational researcher. May God bless you as you continue your studies.